Welcome back to Cause 3D today, and finally the much anticipated rub and buff video. So this dome, if you haven't watched the previous ones, we had this already painted and I put my silver base coat down on it using Spastics. Looks great, but I want a little more of a shine to it. So we're gonna go straight into rub and buff. So let's get started. All right, so I've been keeping my rub and buff silver leaf in my pocket most of the day. Keep it nice and warm, because if this stuff gets cold, if you're doing it like somewhere in a cold environment, it gets hard, and you don't want it to get hard. So I've kept it at a nice 98 point whatever my body temperature is at the moment here in the shop in the air conditioning. So we're gonna start by just explaining what this is. This is a wax-based product. I am using the silver leaf rub and buff. I love this stuff. This tube has probably done, I'd say probably 2 domes already and a bunch of other parts over the course of the last 5 years. And I've got a backup tube in case I run out, but this stuff goes a long way. The reason we put the silver base coat down is because if you do it straight over black, it takes just a little bit more and you kind of get a splotchiness to it. With this, if we have a scratch in the rub and buff or anything like that, it typically will go back to the silver, and it usually does a pretty good job at, the silver base masks any imperfections usually in the silver rub and buff. So to get started, I am going to apply this just with my bare fingers, and it is quite messy. I usually try to keep a rag close at all times. And just a little bit of a dab. Doesn't take much. That's probably way too much. But we're going to do it on the silver panel, whichever one that is, just to get started. So as a demonstration, we're going to get it rubbed in, and heat activates this stuff. So I use all of my fingers to do it. I use my entire hand here, and as you can see, it is dull right now. Let's try to get it all nice and uniform, and you can feel it. You can feel it start to get kind of a tack to it slightly. So it's usually, we got a little extra right there. A couple scratches in it, or what would be imperfections in this stuff, is not a big deal. I actually do not mind it. R2 is not perfect. So there's our first piece, and we're going to let that sit and dry just a hair, and then I'm going to get a microfiber cloth, a brand new one, so we don't introduce any contaminants into it. We'll let that sit for a second, and then we are going to take the microfiber cloth and just polish it up. Let's just take our microfiber and polish on it a little bit, and as you can see, it is really starting to pop out. Now you don't want to get too crazy and wipe it off as you're going. So I'm going to leave that the way it is for now. I got a couple thick spots up here. I might show you how to deal with those later, but it is looking pretty good. And as you can see, this was a silver paint that I had different than the dome silver. So it was a lot more dull, looked like paint. What we're working with here is a lot smoother, and as I've talked to you guys about in the other videos, prep work is always the key to this. If you don't have a smooth surface, it will bring out every single imperfection that you have in there. So you have to make certain that your dome prep work is flawless, unfortunately. We're just gonna get in here and work this around. I'm doing half of the top part here first, just half. You can feel it warming up. It's starting to get a little more tacky now. I'm going to switch to the other side. And there is a you probably can't tell on camera. There is a definite difference between the silver paint and the rub and buff. The rub and buff looks metal. It's got metal particles in it, metal powder in it. So this stuff really really does do the job. So now we're just going to keep working around. I'm going to get all of these spines here. The more you rub it, the more friction you create, the shinier it tends to get. It is really coming along. So we're going to go into probably fast mode here. So we might have to come back in and just apply a little bit more rub and buff in this area. We'll do that right now on camera. And we want to get those little lines out of here. I'm not sure why this happened, but there's just some swirl marks in it. So very light coat right over the top of it. And they're pretty much gone. This is a good thing about rub and buff is you can always reapply this stuff over the top of itself. I'm not really seeing any more major ones except for right here. I'm gonna get that fixed. And remember, R2's not perfect. That's the best part of all this. He is absolutely not perfect. So now we're just going to wipe it down. It's wiping those marks right out of it. The idea is to create friction, not to wipe off the rub and buff, if that kind of makes some sense there. Now I've seen other guys use a piece of scrap leather. And I haven't tried that yet because I didn't have any leather handy to give a go with that on. But they seem to have really good results with it. So I'm curious to try that. All right. That's pretty much it, guys. You know, this is stuff that you don't want to be afraid of it. It's finicky, but it's a really easy medium to work with. You don't want to get too much on your fingers when you're applying it. You kind of want to do a couple test pieces probably, but this stuff is about as metal looking as I have ever seen on a, as far as paint goes, nothing else is comparable to rub and buff. So that's it. Pretty much done. I'm gonna get cleaned up here and maybe touch up a few more spots. You can apply more than one coat if you want. It's not that big a deal. It's pretty easy to just go back and do another quick coat like I did. Probably took me 10-15 minutes to do the whole dome. Don't get me wrong, my hand is exhausted at this point, but it's worth it. The final result is totally worth it. And prep work is the key. Once you get it prepped properly, and you have a smooth surface to work with, it really does bring out some great look. Let's add some more light in here. I didn't want to oversaturate it with light so you guys got a false impression, but it is shiny. So thanks for joining us today, and short video I know, but rub and buff, super simple. Any metal part, any part that's silver that you want to make look metal, this stuff is great. So make sure that you hit the like and subscribe button, and we will see you in the next video.